President Alex Carter sat in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House and watched the recording for the 5th time. Around the long table sat the most powerful people on Earth: military leaders, scientists, diplomats, and intelligence chiefs. Every face showed the same mix of anger and determination that had been building for 3 days since the New Horizon returned with news that changed everything. "Play it again," said Admiral Kate Sullivan, commander of Earth's space fleet. Her voice was cold and steady, but Jake Morrison could see the fire in her eyes. She had been a fighter pilot before becoming an admiral, and still thought like someone who solved problems with action rather than words. The recording played once more. Alien laughter filled the room as Zethkalar mocked humanity and demonstrated weapons that could erase matter from existence. When it finished, the room fell silent, except for the hum of air recyclers and the quiet breathing of people who were trying not to show how scared they really were. General Rick Hayes broke the silence. He was old enough to remember the last real war on Earth, and his scarred hands showed he had done his share of fighting. "We have maybe a year before they expect an answer, maybe less if they get impatient. That's not enough time to match their technology, but it might be enough to surprise them." "Surprise them how?" asked Dr. Ben Rodriguez, Earth's top scientist. "Did you see what their patrol ship did to that asteroid? Our best nuclear weapons couldn't scratch their weakest vessel. They have technology we can't even understand, let alone copy." "Then we don't try to match them," Admiral Sullivan said. "We find another way. Every enemy has weaknesses. Every army can be defeated if you hit them where they don't expect it." President Carter leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Kate?" "I'm suggesting we stop thinking like humans and start thinking like survivors. These aliens think we're weak and stupid. Good. Let them keep thinking that while we figure out how to cut their throats in the dark." Captain Morrison had been quiet during most of the meeting, but now he spoke up. "There's something else in the recording that everyone missed. When Zethkalar was talking about the Galactic Council, he mentioned other species. 12 different kinds of aliens working together to rule the galaxy. That means they're not all the same. They have different strengths and different weaknesses." Director Sam Williams from the Strategic Defense Initiative nodded slowly. "Jake's right. An alliance that big must have cracks in it. Old grudges, competing, interest, species that don't trust each other completely. If we can find those cracks, we exploit them," President Carter finished. "But first we need to know what we're really dealing with. I'm authorizing Project Defiance with unlimited funding and complete access to every resource on Earth. Ben, you're in charge of research and development. Kate, you handle military planning. Sam, you run intelligence gathering. Rick, you prepare our ground forces for whatever's coming." Dr. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. "Sir, with respect, we don't even know where to start. Their technology is so far beyond ours that trying to catch up would be like Stone Age people trying to build spacecraft." "Then don't try to catch up," President Carter said. "Leap ahead. Think outside every box we've ever made. Use our advantages instead of trying to match their strengths." "What advantages?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "They live longer than us. They're stronger than us. Their technology is thousands of years more advanced than ours. What do we have that they don't?" Captain Morrison smiled grimly. "We have something they lost a long time ago. We still remember how to fight for our lives." Over the next 6 months, Project Defiance grew into the largest scientific and military effort in human history. Every nation on Earth contributed resources and personnel. Old enemies worked together because the alternative was extinction or slavery. Research facilities were built in secret locations across the solar system. The moon became one giant weapons laboratory. Mars was turned into a training ground for new kinds of soldiers. Dr. Rodriguez made the first breakthrough 3 months into the project. He was studying recordings of the alien demonstration when he noticed something others had missed. The weapon that destroyed the asteroid had required several seconds to charge up, and the ship had to remain perfectly still during firing. That suggested their weapons were powerful but not flexible. "They're too advanced," he told the research team. "Their technology is so refined and perfect that it can only work in specific ways. Our weapons are crude, but they're adaptable. A human soldier can use a rifle as a club if they run out of bullets. I bet their soldiers can't do anything their equipment wasn't specifically designed for." The insight led to a new approach. Instead of trying to build better weapons, humanity focused on building more flexible ones. Instead of stronger armor, they developed gear that could be modified quickly in the field. Instead of faster ships, they created vessels that could change their purpose depending on what the mission required. Admiral Sullivan took a different approach to the military challenge. She studied every recorded battle in human history, looking for times when weaker forces had defeated stronger ones. The pattern was always the same. The weaker side won by refusing to fight the way their enemy expected them to fight. These aliens have been top dogs for thousands of years, she told her staff officers. They're used to enemies who follow rules and fight fair. They probably have doctrine and training for every kind of conventional warfare. But I bet they've never faced an enemy willing to cheat. Captain Morrison volunteered for the most dangerous part of Project Defiance. He would take small teams of volunteers in modified ships and scout alien territory. The missions were nearly suicide, but humanity needed intelligence about their enemies. They needed to know how the aliens thought and fought and lived. The first scouting mission launched 6 months after the alien encounter. Morrison's team used a ship designed to look like space junk, old metal hull plates welded together with deliberately crude workmanship that would fool alien sensors. Inside, the ship contained the best stealth technology Earth could build and enough supplies for a 3-month journey into enemy space. What they found surprised everyone. The Galactic Council controlled thousands of worlds, but most of them seemed barely defended. The aliens had grown comfortable with their power and didn't seem to expect any real threats. Their military bases were impressive but designed more for showing off than for actual fighting. They're like kings who haven't faced rebellion in so long they've forgotten why they need armies, Morrison reported back to Earth. Their soldiers are well trained, but they follow rigid patterns. They do everything by the book because the book has worked for them for thousands of years. More scouting missions followed. Human teams learned to move through alien space like ghosts, watching and recording and occasionally stealing small pieces of technology. They discovered that the 12 council species didn't always get along perfectly. Old territorial disputes simmered beneath the surface of their alliance. Some species clearly thought they deserved more power than others. Most importantly, the scouts confirmed what Dr. Rodriguez had suspected. The aliens were so advanced that they had lost the ability to improvise. Their technology was perfect but inflexible. Their soldiers were disciplined but couldn't adapt quickly to unexpected situations. Their leaders made decisions based on established procedures rather than creative thinking. They've been winning for so long they've forgotten how to lose, General Hayes observed. That's going to be their weakness. By the end of the first year, humanity had transformed itself in ways that would have been impossible before the alien threat. Every person on Earth over the age of 16 had received basic military training. Factories that once made cars now built weapons and spacecraft. Scientists who had spent their careers studying peaceful applications of technology were now designing ways to kill aliens more efficiently. The most important change wasn't in technology or weapons, but in attitude. Humanity had always been a species that adapted to survive. Now they were adapting to do more than just survive. They were preparing to win against impossible odds. President Carter addressed the world on the first anniversary of alien contact. They offered us a choice between slavery and extinction. We choose neither. We choose victory. When they return expecting our surrender, they'll find something they never expected to face, a species that refuses to know its place. In orbit, above Earth, the first ships of humanity's new fleet were taking shape. They looked nothing like traditional human vessels and even less like alien ships. They were designed for one purpose: to fight enemies who thought they could not be fought, to win battles that could not be won, to prove that sometimes the weak could make the strong afraid. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizon and watched the massive alien vessel approach through the dark space. The year was 2157, and humanity had been exploring beyond their solar system for only 30 years. They had found empty planets and dead rocks floating in space, but never anything that moved or breathed or thought like they did. Today that changed forever. The alien ship was 3 times larger than any human vessel ever built. Its hull gleamed with a strange purple metal that seemed to shift colors as it moved. Strange symbols glowed along its sides, and Jake could see weapon ports that looked far more advanced than anything Earth had ever created. His hands felt sweaty inside his gloves as he watched the ship come closer. Lieutenant Lisa Park stood beside him at the communications station. She was Earth's best diplomat and had been chosen for this mission because of her skill with languages and her calm nature. Even she looked nervous as she prepared to make contact with whatever lived inside that massive ship. Her fingers moved over the control panel as she sent out the standard greeting message that Earth's leaders had prepared for this moment. The response came faster than anyone expected. A deep voice filled the bridge and spoke in perfect English. "Greetings, little creatures. I am Ambassador Zethkalar of the Galactic Council. We have been watching your species crawl out of your tiny solar system like babies learning to walk. How amusing that you have finally reached far enough to meet us." The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. The alien had called them little creatures and babies. There was no respect in the voice, only amusement, like someone watching children play with toys. Jake looked at Lisa and saw her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice steady as she replied. "This is Lieutenant Lisa Park representing Earth and humanity. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship with other species in the galaxy. We hope to learn from you and share what we know." Laughter filled the bridge. Not just one voice, but many voices laughing together, like Jake had just told the funniest joke they had ever heard. The sound made his skin crawl and his face burn with anger. When the laughter finally stopped, Zethkalar spoke again. "Learn from us. Share what you know. Oh, precious little ones. What could you possibly know that would interest species who have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years before? Your kind even discovered fire. You are so young, so weak, so limited. Your lives are over in a blink compared to ours. Your technology is like stone tools compared to our weapons. Your ships move like snails compared to our vessels." More laughter came from the alien ship. Jake could hear different voices now, speaking in languages he did not understand, but the tone was clear. They were all laughing at humanity like people might laugh at a dog trying to read a book. "Perhaps you would like to see the difference between your kind and real civilization," Zethkalar continued. "Bring your little ship closer so we can show you what actual power looks like." Jake wanted to refuse, but he knew this was why they had come so far from Earth. Humanity needed to know what was out here in the galaxy. He gave the order, and his pilot, Commander Nick Walsh, moved the New Horizon closer to the alien vessel. As they approached, Jake could see other ships coming out of empty space. They had been invisible until now, hidden by technology that Earth could not even dream of. One of the new ships was smaller than the others, but still larger than the New Horizon. It had a sleek design that looked like it was built for war. Weapon ports lined its hull and strange energy patterns danced across its surface. Jake realized this was probably a military vessel, and his hands moved to his own ship's weapons controls without thinking. "Do not be alarmed, little one," Zethkalar said, and Jake could hear the smile in his voice. "We are not going to hurt you. We are going to educate you. Watch carefully so you can tell your leaders what you have seen." The military ship moved away from the group and positioned itself next to a large asteroid that floated nearby. Jake watched as lights began to glow along the ship's hull, and energy built up in ways that made his instruments scream warnings. Then a beam of pure light shot out from the alien vessel and struck the asteroid. The rock simply disappeared, not broken apart or melted or destroyed in any normal way. One moment it was there, a chunk of stone and metal the size of a city block. The next moment there was nothing but empty space and a faint glow that faded quickly. Jake's instruments could not even detect where the asteroid had gone. "Impressive, yes," Zethkalar said. "That was our standard patrol vessel using perhaps 1% of its power. Your largest warships would not survive even that gentle touch. Now imagine what our real weapons can do when we decide to use them." Jake felt his heart pounding as the reality hit him. Humanity was not alone in the galaxy, but they might as well be insects compared to these aliens. Everything Earth thought they knew about warfare, and technology was worthless against enemies who could make asteroids vanish with casual ease. "But do not despair, little creatures," the alien continued, and now his voice sounded almost kind, like a parent talking to a scared child. "The Galactic Council is not without mercy. We offer protection to young species like yours. Accept our guidance and live under our care. We will keep you safe from the real dangers in this galaxy. All you must do is acknowledge that you are not ready to stand as equals among the stars." Lisa looked at Jake with anger burning in her eyes. The offer was clear. Become pets or face destruction. Accept that humanity would never be more than children playing with toys while the adults made all the important decisions. Jake knew that every word of this conversation was being recorded and would be sent back to Earth. The leaders there would have to decide humanity's future based on what happened here today. "We need time to consider your generous offer," Lisa said through gritted teeth. "Of course you do," Seth Kolar replied. "Take all the time you need. But remember what you have seen here. Your species is weak and small and young. We have ruled this galaxy since before your son was born. Accept reality and live in peace under our protection. Try to fight us and learn why every other species in the galaxy fears our name." The alien ships began to move away, disappearing back into whatever technology hid them from human sensors. Only the massive vessel remained, floating in space like a monument to alien power. Jake stared at it and felt something burning in his chest. Not fear, though there was plenty of that. Not despair, though the future looked dark. What burned inside him was pure human stubbornness, the same trait that had driven his species to climb down from the trees and build cities and reach for the stars. "Set course for Earth," he told his pilot. "Maximum speed." "Yes, sir," Nick replied. "Are we retreating?" Jake looked at the alien ship one more time and smiled grimly. "No, son. We're going home to get ready for war." 3 years had passed since humanity learned they were not alone in the galaxy, and those 3 years had changed everything. Maya Thompson stood in the construction bay on Luna Base 7 and watched the final assembly of her greatest creation. The ship looked like nothing that had ever been built before, a mixture of human engineering and alien technology that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. "Ghost Ship Prototype 7 is ready for testing," she told Admiral Sullivan over the comm system. Maya had started the war as a civilian engineer designing mining equipment. Now she was the chief architect of humanity's most secret weapons program. The transformation surprised even her. Admiral Sullivan's voice crackled through the speakers. "Outstanding work, Maya. How confident are you that the stealth systems will fool alien sensors?" Maya looked at the strange hull plating that covered her creation. It wasn't really metal, but a synthetic material that could change its properties based on what kind of energy hit it. Radar would see empty space. Optical sensors would see a piece of floating debris. Heat detectors would read the same temperature as the surrounding vacuum. "Confident enough to bet my life on it," she replied. "Because that's exactly what I'm doing when the first crew takes this thing into alien space." The ship was part of a new strategy that had emerged from 3 years of desperate innovation. Humanity couldn't build vessels as powerful as alien warships, but they could build vessels that alien warships couldn't see coming. The ghost ships were designed to strike from hiding and disappear before the enemy could respond. In another part of the lunar facility, pilot Tony Clark was preparing for a different kind of test. He sat in the cockpit of a Phantom fighter, humanity's answer to alien spacecraft that could make asteroids vanish. The Phantom looked more like an insect than a traditional ship, all curves and organic shapes that confused enemy targeting systems. "Ready for neural link activation," announced Dr. Rodriguez from the control room. The breakthrough had come 2 years into the project when human scientists discovered that their brains worked differently than alien minds. Where aliens thought in rigid patterns, humans could make intuitive leaps that no computer could predict. Tony felt the familiar tingling sensation as the ship's artificial intelligence connected directly to his nervous system. This was the real revolution. Not just faster ships or better weapons, but vessels that could think and react as quickly as human pilots could imagine new tactics. "Neural sync established," Tony reported. "All systems responding to thought commands." He didn't need to touch controls or speak orders. The ship read his intentions directly from his brain and responded instantly. When he thought about turning left, the ship turned. When he imagined accelerating, the engines fired. When he wanted to fire weapons, the guns aimed and shot at targets he was only thinking about. Beginning combat simulation, Dr. Rodriguez announced. The test chamber filled with holographic alien ships, perfect recreations based on intelligence gathered during scouting missions. Tony smiled as he engaged the enemy in ways that would have been impossible with traditional controls. He spun and dove and twisted through three-dimensional space while firing at targets that appeared faster than conscious thought could track. The alien ships in the simulation fought exactly like real aliens would fight, with precise movements and carefully calculated attacks that followed established tactical doctrine. They were dangerous and deadly and completely predictable. Tony destroyed all 12 simulated enemies in under 3 minutes without taking a single hit. How did he do that? Asked one of the technicians watching the test. Dr. Rodriguez studied the data readouts. He didn't think about what he was doing. He just reacted to each situation as it developed. The alien ships were programmed to counter human tactics, but they couldn't counter human instinct. Meanwhile, in the intelligence section of the lunar base, Lieutenant Dan Foster was analyzing reports from the latest scouting missions. Captain Morrison had been busy over the past year, leading increasingly bold reconnaissance flights deep into Council territory. What they were learning changed humanity's understanding of their enemy in fundamental ways. The Council has 12 member species, but they're not equal partners, Dan reported to the weekly strategy meeting. 3 species do most of the actual ruling: the Vorth, who provide military leadership, the Kalani, who handle technology and science, and the Morthak, who control trade and resources. The other 9 species are basically junior partners who follow orders. Admiral Sullivan leaned forward. What about their military structure? That's where it gets interesting, Dan continued. They have massive fleets and incredibly powerful weapons, but they haven't fought a real war in over 800 years. Their entire military doctrine is based on intimidating enemies into surrendering before battles actually start. General A. Hayes laughed grimly. So they're bullies who haven't been in a real fight since before America was discovered. That explains why they were so shocked when we didn't immediately bow down and accept their protection offer. There's more, Dan said. Our scouts have identified serious tensions between Council species. The Vorth think they should have more control because they provide military protection. The Kalani resent being treated as junior partners when their technology keeps the alliance running. Several of the smaller species are unhappy about resource allocation and territorial boundaries. President Carter studied the intelligence reports. How serious are these tensions? Serious enough that they've had 3 major diplomatic crises in the past 50 years, Dan replied. Each time they resolved the problem through negotiation and compromise, but the underlying issues never went away. If something happened to disrupt their usual way of handling disputes, they might start fighting each other instead of us, Admiral Sullivan finished. Dan, I want detailed profiles of every Council species. What they want, what they fear, what they hate about each other. If we're going to break up their alliance, we need to know exactly where to apply pressure. The breakthrough that would change everything came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Kim was a psychologist who had been studying alien behavior patterns when she noticed something that the military analysts had missed. The Council species didn't just think differently than humans, they thought differently than each other. Look at this, she told Dr. Rodriguez during a late-night research session. The Vorth make decisions based on honor and tradition. The Kalani use pure logic and mathematical probability. The Morthak think in terms of profit and loss. They've been working together for so long that they've developed ways to communicate despite these differences. But the underlying thought patterns are completely incompatible. Dr. Rodriguez studied her data. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that their alliance works because they follow established procedures for making joint decisions, Dr. Kim explained. But if something forced them to make quick choices without time for their usual negotiation process, they might not be able to agree on anything. The insight led to a new phase of human preparation. Instead of just building better weapons and ships, humanity began developing ways to create chaos in enemy decision-making processes. Psychological warfare became as important as conventional military planning. Colonel Steve Parker became the first person to successfully pilot a fully operational Phantom fighter in actual combat conditions. His mission was simple, but incredibly dangerous. intercept an alien patrol in neutral space, and demonstrate that humanity was no longer helpless. The encounter lasted less than 5 minutes. The alien patrol consisted of 3 ships that detected what they thought was a single human vessel approaching their position. Following standard procedure, they moved to intercept and intimidate the intruder into retreating. Instead, they found themselves facing something that shouldn't have existed. Colonel Parker's Phantom fighter moved like no ship they had ever seen, accelerating and turning in ways that seemed to violate basic physics. When they fired their weapons, the human ship simply wasn't where their computers said it should be. Parker destroyed one alien vessel, disabled another, and let the third one escape to carry word back to the Council. The message was clear. Humanity was no longer the weak species that could be intimidated by demonstrations of superior firepower. The alien response was swift and predictable. A Council fleet moved toward human space to investigate what had happened. To their patrol, they expected to find humans hiding behind defensive positions, hoping that their new weapons might allow them to survive a direct confrontation. What they found instead were empty systems and silent planets. Humanity's fleet had vanished completely, leaving no trace of where they had gone or what they were planning. For the first time in centuries, the Galactic Council faced an enemy they could not find and could not predict. The war was about to begin in earnest, but it would be fought on human terms rather than alien ones. The species that had once been dismissed as weak and primitive was ready to teach the galaxy a lesson about underestimating those who had nothing left to lose. Admiral Jake Morrison floated in the command center of his flagship and watched 12 different star systems on the tactical display. Each system contained a major alien supply depot or military base. Each target had been carefully chosen for maximum strategic impact. In exactly 17 minutes, humanity would announce to the galaxy that the war had begun. All Ghost Ship squadrons report ready for Operation Human Spirit, reported Commander Lisa Park from her position at the communications station. She had been promoted from diplomat to naval officer after proving that she could coordinate complex military operations as well as she had once handled delicate negotiations. Jake nodded and opened a channel to the other ghost ships scattered throughout alien space. This is Admiral Morrison to all units. We've spent 4 years preparing for this moment. The aliens think we're weak because we're young. They think we're harmless because we're small. Today we show them what humans do when someone threatens our freedom. Execute Operation Human Spirit on my mark. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. 12 simultaneous strikes against targets the aliens thought were perfectly safe. No warnings, no formal declarations of war, no opportunity for the enemy to prepare defenses. Just sudden, overwhelming violence delivered by ships the aliens couldn't see coming. Jake's target was the main fuel depot for the 3rd Sector Fleet, a massive space station that supplied energy cells to over 200 alien warships. The station orbited a gas giant in what the aliens considered secure space, protected by automated defense platforms and a small garrison of patrol ships. Beginning final approach, reported Pilot Commander Nick Walsh. The ghost ship moved through space like a piece of cosmic debris, its stealth systems making it invisible to every sensor the aliens possessed. Inside the ship, 30 human Marines checked their weapons and prepared for the most dangerous part of the mission. The aliens had powerful shields and incredible weapons, but they had one fatal weakness. They never expected anyone to actually board their ships and fight hand-to-hand in the corridors. Their military doctrine assumed that space combat would be decided by long-range weapons fired between vessels that never came close enough to touch each other. Docking with alien station in 60 seconds, Nick announced. Marines prepare for boarding action. Captain Linda Harris led the Marine assault team. She had volunteered for the mission despite knowing that the chances of survival were less than 50%. Her team consisted of veterans who had trained for 4 years and captured alien weapons and equipment. They knew exactly how to move through alien corridors and disable alien systems. The docking was perfect. The ghost ship attached itself to the station's hull like a parasite and began cutting through the outer armor with tools designed specifically for this kind of operation. The aliens inside had no idea anything was happening until human Marines were already flooding through their corridors. The fight was brief and brutal. Alien guards were trained to deal with organized attacks by enemies who followed established rules of warfare. They were not prepared for humans who moved like wolves through the station, striking from unexpected directions and using tactics that no civilized species would consider acceptable. "Station secured," Captain Harris reported 15 minutes after the boarding began. "Beginning demolition sequence." While Harris and her Marines planted charges throughout the fuel depot, similar operations were taking place in 11 other star systems. Ghost ships appeared without warning at critical alien facilities. Human boarding teams overwhelmed surprise defenders. Demolition experts destroyed infrastructure that had taken decades to build. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Council had projected power through the certainty that their space was inviolate. No enemy had ever successfully attacked targets deep inside Council territory. The very idea was considered impossible. Now, impossible things were happening in 12 places at once. Supply depots vanished in massive explosions. Communication relay stations went silent. Military bases reported human attackers before losing contact completely. The aliens faced something they had never experienced: the fear that comes from realizing your enemies can strike anywhere at any time. "All missions completed successfully," Jake announced to his fleet commanders. "Phase 2 begins immediately. Scatter according to plan and begin harassment operations. Make them afraid to travel alone." The ghost ships dispersed throughout alien space like seeds scattered by the wind. Over the following weeks, they struck at targets of opportunity: supply convoys, patrol squadrons, isolated outposts. The attacks followed no pattern the aliens could predict or defend against. Human ships appeared from nowhere, struck with devastating efficiency, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Meanwhile, in human space, a different kind of operation was beginning. Pilot Tony Clark led the first Phantom Squadron in a direct assault against an alien battle group that had been sent to investigate the attacks on their supply lines. The enemy consisted of 8 heavy cruisers and 2 battleships, enough firepower to destroy anything humanity had possessed before the war began. "Target acquired," Tony reported as his squadron approached the alien fleet. "Beginning attack run." The alien commander probably felt confident as he watched what appeared to be 20 primitive human fighters approaching his superior force. His ships had shields that could deflect any weapon humans were supposed to possess. His crews were trained professionals with centuries of experience. His victory seemed certain. The first indication that something was wrong came when the human fighters began moving in ways that violated every principle of space combat the aliens understood. They accelerated and decelerated instantly, changed direction without regard for momentum, and seemed to anticipate enemy fire before weapons were even aimed at them. Tony's fighter danced through the alien formation like a ghost made of light and metal. His neural link allowed him to react faster than conscious thought, dodging enemy fire that should have been impossible to avoid. When he fired back, his weapon struck with precision that no organic being should have been able to achieve. "How are they doing that?" the alien commander demanded as he watched his ships take damage from enemies that refused to behave according to established physics. His tactical officer had no answer. The computer models that predicted enemy behavior were useless against pilots who operated on instinct rather than calculation. Every time the aliens thought they understood the human attack pattern, the humans did something completely different. Battle lasted 37 minutes. When it ended, 6 alien ships were destroyed and 4 were disabled. The human Phantom Squadron had suffered no casualties. Tony Clark's after-action report was simple and terrifying from the alien perspective. Enemy forces eliminated, proceeding to secondary target. Similar engagements occurred throughout Council space as humanity demonstrated that their new weapons and tactics were not flukes or desperate gambits. The ghost ships continued their campaign of invisible warfare, while Phantom Squadrons engaged enemy fleets in conventional battles and won decisively. The aliens tried to adapt but found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to follow any recognizable pattern. Human commanders made decisions that seemed random but proved devastatingly effective. Human soldiers used tactics that violated every principle of civilized warfare, but achieved objectives that should have been impossible. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to enjoy fighting in ways the aliens found deeply unsettling. Where Council forces viewed combat as a regrettable necessity to maintain order, human warriors appeared to relish the challenge of facing superior numbers and impossible odds. "They're not trying to win," observed Fourth General Krexthor during an emergency council session. "They're trying to prove something. Every engagement shows them attempting maneuvers that should result in their destruction, but somehow they survive and inflict casualties we cannot afford." Ambassador Zethkalar studied the tactical reports with growing unease. "What are our casualties compared to theirs?" "Unacceptable," the general replied. "We are losing ships at a ratio of 4-1, sometimes higher. Our fleets are designed to fight enemies who attack predictably and retreat when faced with superior force. These humans attack unpredictably and seem to become more aggressive when facing superior force." The war was barely 2 months old, but already the aliens were discovering what it meant to face an enemy who had evolved by competing with other predators, rather than dominating prey species. Humanity brought to the galaxy something the Council had not encountered in centuries: the absolute refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed inevitable. In the depths of space, human ships continued their campaign of terror against an empire that had forgotten what it felt like to be afraid. The species that had once been offered protection as helpless children was teaching the galaxy's rulers that sometimes the weak could make the strong tremble. The Galactic Council chamber had not seen such chaos in over 500 years. Representatives from 12 different species argued loudly in their native languages, while emergency alerts flashed on screens throughout the room. Admiral Jake Morrison watched the confusion from his position at the center of the chamber and felt a grim satisfaction at what humanity had accomplished. 6 months of war had brought the mighty Galactic Council to the edge of collapse. The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were discovering what it meant to face an enemy that refused to follow their rules. Human forces had struck at targets throughout Council space with a ferocity and unpredictability that shattered every assumption about civilized warfare. "Order, we must have order," demanded Council Prime Zethkalar, but his voice carried none of the arrogant confidence it had possessed during humanity's first contact. The Vorth ambassador looked older and more tired than any alien had a right to appear. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he had not been sleeping well since the war began. General Krexthor stood before the assembled representatives and delivered his report with the resigned tone of a soldier who knew he was losing, a war he should have won easily. "Human forces have destroyed or disabled 43% of our military assets in the outer sectors. Their ghost ships continue to strike supply lines with impunity, while their phantom fighters engage our fleets and achieve victory ratios that should be mathematically impossible." "How is this happening?" demanded the Kalani representative, her synthetic voice modulating with what might have been desperation. "Our technology is superior to theirs in every measurable category. Our ships are more powerful, our weapons more advanced, our shields more effective. Technology means nothing against an enemy that refuses to use it conventionally, General," Krexthor replied. "The humans do not engage our fleets in direct combat where our advantages would matter. They strike from hiding, attack our weakest points, and retreat before we can bring superior firepower to bear. When they do fight conventional battles, they use tactics our computers cannot predict or counter." Jake Morrison had been invited to this emergency session as part of the preliminary negotiations that both sides knew were inevitable. The war could continue for years, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The aliens had superior technology, but humanity had something more valuable: the willingness to do whatever it took to win. "Perhaps Admiral Morrison would care to explain his species' position," Zethkalar said with barely controlled anger. Jake stood slowly and looked around the chamber at representatives of 12 species that had once thought humanity was too weak to be worth considering as equals. Now those same aliens hung on his words because they knew he represented the only force in the galaxy that could destroy their civilization. "My position is simple," Jake said in a voice that carried to every corner of the chamber. "You offered us 2 choices, surrender or extinction. We chose a third option: victory." "Victory," snarled the Morthak trade representative. "You have destroyed supply depots and eliminated patrol squadrons. You have not conquered worlds or captured star systems. How do you call this victory? Jake smiled coldly. Because you're all here begging for peace instead of demanding our surrender. 6 months ago, you laughed at humanity and offered to protect us like pets. Today, you're afraid to travel through your own space without heavy escorts. Your fleets hide in defensive positions instead of patrolling their territories. Your trade routes operate under armed guard and still suffer constant losses. Chamber fell silent as the truth of his words sank in. The Galactic Council still possessed enough firepower to destroy Earth 100 times over. But that firepower was useless against enemies who could strike anywhere without warning. The aliens had learned to fear the dark spaces between stars, where human ships might be hiding. What do you want? Zeth Kalar asked quietly. Recognition, Jake replied. Not as a protected species under your guidance, but as equals with the right to govern ourselves and defend our territory. We want seats on the Galactic Council with full voting rights and the same respect you show each other. And if we refuse? The fourth general asked. Jake's smile grew wider. Then we continue the war until there's nothing left of your civilization except stories told by survivors. You've seen what 6 months of limited operations can accomplish. Imagine what we could do if we really tried to hurt you. The threat was not empty, and everyone in the chamber knew it. Human tactics had evolved rapidly during the war as new strategies were tested and refined in actual combat. Ghost ship operations had become so effective that many alien supply routes had been abandoned completely. Phantom squadrons had achieved kill ratios that defied every principle of military mathematics. Most importantly, humanity had proven that they could not be intimidated or discouraged by losses. Where alien species would seek negotiation after losing 10% of their forces, humans seemed to become more determined as casualties mounted. The psychological profiles suggested they actually performed better under pressure than in comfortable conditions. There are other considerations, said the Kalani representative. Your species displays disturbing tendencies toward violence and unpredictable behavior. How do we know you will not use council membership to attack other species without provocation? The same way we know you won't attack us, Jake replied. Mutual self-interest and the understanding that anyone who breaks the peace will face retaliation from everyone else. The Council has kept order in the galaxy for centuries through that principle. It will continue to work with humans as members instead of enemies. General Hayes entered the chamber and approached Jake with a data pad containing the latest intelligence reports. The information confirmed what Jake had hoped. The war was starting to fracture the alien alliance exactly as human strategists had predicted. 3 council species had formally complained about bearing disproportionate costs for the war effort. 2 others had begun withdrawing their fleets to protect their home systems. The Morthak had even suggested negotiating separate peace agreements with humanity. The Galactic Council is dissolving, Jake announced to the chamber. Your alliance depends on the certainty that working together makes you stronger than standing alone. We've proven that assumption is false. Human forces have inflicted more damage on Council territory in 6 months than your enemies managed in the previous century. If this continues, member species will start making individual peace agreements with us to protect their own interests. Zeth Kalar conferred quietly with other Council leaders for several minutes before addressing Jake again. What guarantee can you offer that humanity will honor Council laws and procedures if granted membership? The same guarantee you offer each other, Jake replied. None whatsoever, except that breaking faith would cost us more than keeping it. We're not asking to join your club because we love peace and harmony. We're demanding membership because we've proven we're strong enough to destroy you if you exclude us. The negotiations continued for 3 days as lawyers and diplomats worked out details that would reshape galactic politics forever. Humanity would receive 4 seats on the expanded Galactic Council, reflecting their military power and strategic importance. Human space would be recognized as sovereign territory with the right to self-governance and self-defense. In exchange, humanity agreed to abide by Council laws regarding warfare, trade, and territorial disputes. Human forces would be withdrawn from alien space and ghost ship operations would be suspended. The war would end with neither side claiming complete victory, though everyone understood which species had truly won. President Carter addressed the human fleet from his office in Washington as the peace agreement was signed. Today we take our place among the stars not as supplicants seeking protection, but as equals who have earned respect through strength. The galaxy will never again dismiss humanity as weak or harmless. We are the species that chose to fight when fighting seemed impossible, and we are the species that won. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched alien vessels maintaining respectful distances as the human fleet prepared to return home. 6 months earlier, those same aliens had laughed at humanity's primitive technology and short lifespans. Now they spoke of humans in whispered tones, using phrases like, the unpredictable ones, and those who bend reality to their will. The transformation was complete. The soft pink weaklings who had climbed down from the trees had become the most feared military force in the galaxy. Not through superior technology or overwhelming numbers, but through the uniquely human refusal to accept defeat, even when defeat seemed certain. The stars belonged to humanity now, not because they had conquered them, but because they had proven worthy of them. The galaxy had learned a lesson that would not be forgotten. Never underestimate the species that reach the stars by refusing to know their place.